Jack Harper woke up to the sound of hissing steam and the acrid smell of burning metal. His body ached all over, and his vision was blurry as he tried to sit up. The ground beneath him was hard and uneven, littered with jagged rocks and patches of strange, glowing moss. He blinked several times, trying to focus, and then it hit him, the crash. Memories flooded back in fragments, alarms blaring, the ship shaking violently, the captain shouting orders, and then nothing. He groaned and reached for his side, feeling a sharp pain where a piece of shrapnel had embedded itself into his flesh. Blood soaked through his torn jumpsuit, but Jack knew he couldn't afford to stop moving. Survival depended on staying alert. Slowly, he pushed himself to his feet, wincing with every step as he stumbled away from the wreckage. Behind him, the remains of the scout ship smoldered, smoke rising into the alien sky like a dark warning. The air felt thick and heavy, almost suffocating, and the colors around him were unlike anything he'd ever seen before. The sky was a swirling mix of deep purples and fiery oranges, with two suns hanging low on the horizon. Strange plants twisted upward from the ground, their leaves pulsating faintly as if alive. In the distance, mountains loomed, their peaks hidden by thick clouds that crackled with electricity. It wasn't just beautiful, it was terrifying. Jack glanced at the scanner strapped to his wrist. Its screen flickered weakly, displaying fragmented data about the planet's atmosphere. Oxygen levels were barely breathable, and radiation readings were dangerously high. This place was a death trap, and yet here he was, alone and injured, with no idea how far he was from any kind of help, or if help would even come. As he moved farther from the wreckage, Jack heard a low rumble coming from the direction of the crash site. Turning back, he froze in horror as flames erupted from what was left of the ship. The explosion sent shockwaves rippling through the ground, nearly knocking him off his feet. Any hope of salvaging supplies or finding other survivors vanished in an instant. All he could do now was keep moving forward. His mind raced as he tried to think of a plan. Nightfall was approaching, signaled by the dimming light of the twin suns. He needed shelter, something to protect him from whatever dangers lurked in the darkness. But first, he had to assess his situation. Scanning the area, Jack spotted a cluster of large boulders nearby. They weren't perfect, but they might offer some protection if he could fortify them. Using the multi-tool clipped to his belt, Jack began breaking off smaller rocks and stacking them around the base of the largest boulder. His hands trembled, not just from exhaustion, but from fear. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves made him jump, convinced that something was watching him. And maybe something was. The planet seemed alive, its eerie silence broken only by distant growls and screeches that sent chills down his spine. Despite the overwhelming odds, Jack refused to give up. Back on Earth, he'd always been known for his stubbornness, his refusal to admit defeat even when things looked bleak. That same determination fueled him now as he worked tirelessly to create a makeshift barrier against whatever might be lurking in the shadows. High above the planet's surface, a sleek spacecraft hovered silently. Inside, a group of Zenari scientists observed Jack's movements with keen interest. Their large, almond-shaped eyes glowed faintly in the dim light of their control room as they analyzed the data streaming in from their surveillance drones. "This human is fascinating," said Lizura, her voice soft but filled with curiosity. She leaned closer to the holographic display, showing Jack's actions. "Look at how quickly he adapts. Most species we studied on Exura 7 wouldn't last more than a few hours." Her colleague Varnuk crossed his arms skeptically. "Humans are fragile. We've seen their ships destroyed by minor malfunctions. What makes you think this one will survive?" Orange was just beginning. The next morning brought little relief. Jack woke to the sound of distant thunder. Though there were no clouds in the sky, the air was thick with humidity, and the ground beneath him felt damp, as if the planet itself was sweating. His body ached from the previous night's encounter, and his makeshift barricade showed signs of damage where the creature had tried to break through. Still, he was alive. and that was something. Jack took a moment to assess his situation. His wrist scanner still flickered weakly, offering limited information about the environment. According to the readings, the temperature would rise sharply during the day, making dehydration a serious concern. Water was scarce, and the glowing moss he'd seen earlier didn't look like something he could drink. He needed to find a source quickly or risk collapsing under the harsh conditions. As he stood up, brushing dirt off his hands, Jack noticed something unusual, a faint trail of footprints leading away from the crash site. They weren't animal tracks. They were too uniform, too deliberate. Could someone else have survived? The thought gave him a surge of hope, but it also raised questions. If there was another survivor, why hadn't they come looking for him? Deciding to follow the trail, Jack grabbed his multi-tool and a shard of metal he'd been using as a makeshift weapon. Every step felt heavier than the last, his body protesting against the strain, but he forced himself to keep moving. The landscape around him shifted subtly, the jagged rocks giving way to patches of dense vegetation. The plants here were even stranger than before. Some oozed a sticky sap, while others emitted low hums that vibrated in his chest. After what felt like hours, Jack spotted movement ahead. At first, he thought it was another predator, but then he saw her, a woman crouched by a shallow stream, filling a small container with water. She looked up just as he approached, her eyes widening in alarm. "Who are you?" she demanded, clutching the container tightly. "Jack Harper," he said, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm from the scout ship that crashed yesterday. Are you alone?" The woman hesitated, studying him carefully. "Emily Carter," she finally replied. "I've been here for weeks. My ship went down not far from here." Relief washed over Jack, but it was short-lived. Emily's expression remained guarded, and he could see the toll this planet had taken on her. Her clothes were torn and stained, and dark circles ringed her eyes. Despite her weary appearance, there was a sharpness to her gaze that told Jack she wasn't someone to underestimate. "You're lucky to be alive," Emily said after a moment. "Most people don't last more than a day on Exura 7. "I'm starting to see why," Jack muttered, glancing around at the alien terrain. "Look, I don't know about you, but I could use some help. Together, we might stand a better chance." Emily considered his words, then nodded slowly. "Fine, but we stick to my rules. This planet doesn't forgive mistakes." Over the next few hours, Emily shared what she'd learned about surviving on Exura 7. She pointed out which plants were safe to eat and which ones could kill within minutes. She showed him how to filter water using layers of moss and sand, though she warned it wasn't perfect. Most importantly, she explained the dangers of the creatures that roamed the planet, predators that hunted both day and night. "They're smart," Emily said, her voice low. "They'll test your defenses, wait for you to make a mistake. You can't let your guard down, not even for a second." Jack listened intently, absorbing every detail. He realized how much he still had to learn if he wanted to survive here. In return, he shared his own knowledge, showing Emily how to craft simple traps using materials salvaged from the wreckage. Together, they began fortifying her camp, which was located near a rocky outcrop that offered some natural protection. High above the planet, the Zenari continued their observations. Lizera watched the two humans work together, fascinated by their dynamic. "Look at this," she said to Varnock, pointing to the screen. "They're combining their skills. Cooperation isn't something we see often among species on Exura 7. Varnock frowned. "It's still survival. They're doing what any intelligent beings would do when faced with extinction." "Perhaps," Lizera admitted. "But there's something more here. A sense of trust, of mutual reliance. It's almost human." The next morning brought little relief. Jack woke to the sound of distant thunder, though there were no clouds in the sky. The air was thick with humidity, and the ground beneath him felt damp, as if the planet itself was sweating. His body ached from the previous night's encounter, and his makeshift barricade showed signs of damage where the creature had tried to break through. Still, he was alive, and that was something. The growls grew louder, and the glowing eyes drew closer. Jack and Emily exchanged a quick glance, their unspoken understanding clear. They had to act fast. Without hesitation, Emily grabbed a torch from beside the fire and thrust it toward the approaching creatures. The sudden burst of light startled them, causing the pack to retreat slightly into the shadows. "Stay close to the fire," Emily instructed, her voice calm but firm. "They don't like the light." Jack nodded, positioning himself so they formed a defensive line. He held his metal shard tightly, ready to strike if any of the creatures dared to get too close. The predators circled cautiously, their movements fluid and deliberate. They were unlike anything Jack had ever seen, sleek, reptilian bodies covered in dark scales that shimmered faintly under the moonlight, with rows of razor-sharp teeth glinting whenever they snapped their jaws. For what felt like hours, the standoff continued. The creatures would inch forward, only to retreat when Emily waved the torch or Jack brandished his makeshift weapon. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the predators lost interest and melted back into the darkness. The night returned to its eerie silence, broken only by the crackling of the fire. "Well," Jack said, exhaling deeply as he lowered his weapon. "That was fun." Emily managed a weak smile, though her hands still trembled slightly. "You did good. Most people freeze up during their first attack." "I almost did," Jack admitted, sitting down heavily on the ground. "But I guess adrenaline kicks in when you're staring death in the face." They sat quietly for a while, catching their breath and tending to the fire. Despite the danger, Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. Surviving another night meant they were one step closer to finding a way off this planet, or at least surviving long enough to try. The next morning, Emily suggested they scout further from the camp to gather more resources. "We can't rely on just what's nearby," she explained. "If we want to last, we need to find better food, cleaner water, and materials to improve our shelter." Jack agreed, and together they set out, moving cautiously through the alien landscape. As they walked, Emily pointed out landmarks and warned Jack about areas to avoid. She showed him how to identify safe paths based on subtle signs in the environment, like certain plants that only grew where the soil wasn't toxic. After several hours of searching, they stumbled upon something unexpected, a grove filled with luminescent fungi. The fungi pulsed softly, casting a pale green glow over the surrounding area. Jack knelt down to examine them more closely, noticing how the air around the grove seemed calmer, quieter than elsewhere. "These are rare," Emily said, her tone tinged with awe. "I've seen them before, but never this many in one place. Some species here avoid these fungi. It's like they emit something that repels predators." "That could be useful," Jack replied thoughtfully. "If we bring some back to the camp, maybe it'll keep the creatures away." Emily nodded. "Good idea, but we have to be careful. Not all fungi are harmless. We should test them first." Using a small knife, Jack carefully cut a piece from one of the larger fungi and placed it in a container. They decided to take only a few samples, not wanting to disturb the grove too much. As they prepared to leave, Jack noticed something else, a cluster of vines growing near the edge of the grove. They looked ordinary enough, but when he touched one, it recoiled slightly, curling inward as if alive. "Don't touch those," Emily warned sharply. "Some vines here release toxins if they feel threatened." Jack quickly pulled his hand back, grateful for Emily's knowledge. He realized just how much he still had to learn about this planet, and how lucky he was to have someone like her by his side. Back at the camp, they began experimenting with the fungi. Jack crushed a small piece and mixed it with water, creating a paste that emitted a faint glow. They spread the paste along the edges of their barricade, hoping it would serve as a deterrent against predators. To their relief, the usual nocturnal prowlers stayed farther away than usual that night. High above the planet, the Zenari observed these developments with growing fascination. Lizura leaned forward, studying the holographic display showing Jack and Emily's latest efforts. "They're adapting faster than I expected," she remarked to Varnock. Even the fungi, they recognized its value almost immediately. Varnock crossed his arms, though there was a hint of curiosity in his expression. "It's impressive, yes, but adaptation alone won't save them. Xura 7 is unpredictable. One mistake could still end them." The days passed in a blur of hard work and constant vigilance. Jack and Emily had settled into a routine, dividing their tasks between gathering resources, reinforcing the shelter, and experimenting with new ways to protect themselves. Each morning began with a quick check of their defenses, followed by scouting trips to explore the surrounding area. By evening, they returned to the camp exhausted but satisfied with their progress. One afternoon, while searching for materials near the glowing fungi grove, Jack noticed something unusual: a narrow path leading into a dense cluster of trees. The trail was barely visible, almost hidden beneath thick vines and strange, pulsating plants. Curiosity got the better of him, and he called Emily over to take a look. "What do you think?" Jack asked, pointing at the path. "Should we follow it?" Emily hesitated, her eyes scanning the entrance cautiously. It could be dangerous. These kinds of paths usually lead somewhere important, like water or shelter. But they're also traps. Predators often use them to ambush prey. Jack nodded, understanding the risk. Still, if there's something useful at the end of it, it might be worth checking out. We can go slow and stay alert. After a brief discussion, they decided to proceed, moving carefully along the winding trail. The air grew cooler as they ventured deeper into the forest, and the sounds of the wilderness faded, replaced by an eerie silence. The trees here were unlike anything they'd seen before, tall and twisted, their branches interlocking to form a canopy that blocked out most of the sunlight. After about 20 minutes of walking, they emerged into a clearing. In the center stood a massive cliffside with several cave openings dotting its face. The caves looked promising, deep enough to provide shelter and high enough off the ground to deter many predators. Jack and Emily exchanged excited glances. "This could work," Emily said, her voice tinged with cautious optimism. "If we reinforce one of these caves, it could be safer than our current camp." They spent the next hour inspecting the caves, testing their stability and checking for signs of habitation. One of the larger caves seemed ideal. It was spacious, dry, and easy to defend. Best of all, it offered a natural vantage point overlooking the surrounding area, giving them a clear view of any approaching threats. Back at their original camp, they packed up their belongings and prepared to move. It wasn't an easy task. They had accumulated quite a bit of gear over the past few days, including tools, weapons, and supplies scavenged from the wreckage. But they worked together efficiently, carrying items in shifts until everything was relocated to the new site. Once settled in the cave, they began fortifying it immediately. Using metal scraps and rocks, they built a sturdy barrier across the entrance, leaving only a small gap for visibility and ventilation. Inside, they organized their supplies neatly against the walls and set up a fire pit in the center of the space. The glow of the fire illuminated the rough stone walls, creating a sense of warmth and security that neither of them had felt since arriving on Xura 7. As night fell, the temperature dropped sharply, but the cave provided much-needed insulation against the cold. Jack and Emily sat close to the fire, eating the simple meal of dried rations and roasted fungi they'd brought from the grove. For the first time in days, they allowed themselves to relax slightly, enjoying the relative safety of their new home. High above the planet, the Zenari continued their observations. Lizura watched intently as the two humans transformed the cave into a fortified shelter. She marveled at their ingenuity, noting how they combined practicality with creativity to adapt to their environment. "They've chosen well," she remarked to Varnock, gesturing at the holographic display. "That location offers both protection and strategic advantage. They're thinking ahead." Varnock grunted in acknowledgement but remained skeptical. It's still survival. Even the best shelter won't save them if they underestimate this planet. Lizura didn't argue. Instead, She focused on the details of their efforts, the way they worked seamlessly together, anticipating each other's needs without speaking. There was a rhythm to their partnership, a harmony that seemed almost instinctive. It fascinated her. Back on the surface, Jack and Emily discussed their next steps. "We need to start thinking long-term," Emily said, poking at the fire with a stick. "This shelter is good, but we can't stay here forever. Sooner or later, we'll run out of food or water, or something worse will happen." The days in the cave passed quickly, each one blending into the next as Jack and Emily worked tirelessly to improve their chances of survival. They had grown accustomed to the rhythm of their new life, gathering food, reinforcing the shelter, and experimenting with ways to signal for help. But despite their progress, the planet never let them forget its dangers. One evening, as they prepared for bed, a low rumble echoed through the cave. At first, Jack thought it was thunder, but the sound grew louder, deeper, until the ground beneath them began to tremble. Emily grabbed her spear and moved closer to the entrance, peering out cautiously. "What is that?" Jack whispered, joining her by the barrier. "I don't know," Emily replied, her voice tense. "But it's big." The source of the noise soon revealed itself. A massive creature emerged from the shadows, its body covered in thick, armored plates that glinted faintly in the dim light. It moved slowly, deliberately, its eyes scanning the area with predatory focus. The creature was unlike anything they'd encountered before, larger than the others, with claws that could tear through metal and a jaw lined with rows of jagged teeth. "Stay quiet," Emily murmured, gripping her weapon tightly. "If we're lucky, it won't notice us." But luck wasn't on their side. The creature paused near the cave entrance, sniffing the air, its head tilted slightly, as if sensing something inside. Then, with a sudden burst of speed, it lunged at the barrier, slamming into it with enough force to shake the entire cave. Jack reacted instinctively, grabbing a torch and thrusting it toward the creature. The flames startled it momentarily, causing it to retreat a few steps. Emily followed up by hurling a sharpened stake, which struck the creature's shoulder. It roared in pain but didn't flee. Instead, it circled the entrance, searching for another way in. "We need to hold it off," Jack said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "If it gets inside, we're done." Emily nodded, already moving to set up additional defenses. She triggered one of the traps they'd placed outside, causing a cascade of rocks to fall near the creature. The distraction gave them a brief reprieve, but the beast wasn't deterred for long. It charged again, this time breaking through part of the barrier. Jack swung his metal shard with all his strength, striking the creature's snout. The blow didn't do much damage, but it was enough to make the animal hesitate. Seizing the opportunity, Emily lit a bundle of dried vines and threw it at the creature's feet. The sudden flare of fire forced it to back away, giving them precious seconds to regroup. "Keep going," Jack shouted, grabbing another makeshift weapon. "We can't stop now." For what felt like hours, they fought desperately, using every tool and trick they had. Fire, sharp objects, and loud noises, all were employed to keep the creature at bay. Finally, after a particularly fierce strike from Jack's shard, the beast let out an angry roar and retreated into the darkness, disappearing as suddenly as it had arrived. Breathing heavily, Jack and Emily collapsed against the cave wall, their bodies trembling with exhaustion. The barrier was damaged, but it had held, at least for now. "That was too close," Emily said, her voice shaky. "We need to fix this before it comes back." Jack nodded, already assessing the damage. "We'll reinforce it tonight and set up more traps. If that thing decides to try again, we'll be ready." The days that followed were a mix of progress and tension. Jack and Emily continued refining their signaling device, testing it whenever they had a moment. The faint signal it emitted was inconsistent, often fading in and out due to the planet's interference. Still, they refused to give up hope. Each time the device flickered to life, even briefly, they felt a surge of determination. One morning, While scouting for more materials, Jack noticed something unusual near the glowing fungi grove, a patch of ground that seemed disturbed, as though something had been buried there. Curious, he called Emily over to take a look. "What do you think?" Jack asked, pointing at the uneven soil. "Could it be natural, or did something dig this up?" Emily knelt down, brushing away loose dirt with her hands. "It's hard to say. This planet is full of surprises. But if there's something useful here, it might be worth checking out." They began digging carefully, using sticks and their multi-tools to avoid triggering any potential traps. After several minutes, they uncovered a strange object, a smooth metallic sphere about the size of a basketball. Its surface shimmered faintly, reflecting the dim light of the twin suns. "What is this?" Jack muttered, turning the sphere over in his hands. It was cool to the touch, and there were no visible seams or markings. "I don't know," Emily replied, her brow furrowed. "But it doesn't look like it belongs here. Maybe it's from another ship, or even the Zenari." "The Zenari?" Jack asked, glancing at her sharply. "You think they've been watching us?" Emily hesitated before nodding. "It's possible. This planet is too hostile for them to ignore. If they're studying it, they've probably seen us by now." Jack frowned, considering the implications. If they're watching, why haven't they helped us? Why just sit back and let us struggle? "Maybe they're waiting to see what we can do," Emily suggested. "Or maybe they don't know how to approach us without making things worse." Back at the cave, they examined the sphere more closely. It didn't respond to touch or sound, and none of their tools could scratch its surface. Frustrated but intrigued, they decided to keep it safe in case it held some kind of value. High above the planet, the Zenari observed their discovery with growing interest. Lizera leaned forward, her eyes widening as she studied the holographic display showing the humans interacting with the sphere. "They found one of our probes," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. "This changes everything." Varnuk crossed his arms, his expression skeptical. "Are you sure it's wise to reveal ourselves? Humans are unpredictable. They might react poorly." "We've already interfered by leaving the probe behind," Lizera countered. "Besides, they've proven themselves capable. If anyone deserves a chance, it's them." After much debate, the Zenari decided to make contact. A sleek, hovering drone descended silently toward the cave, emitting soft tones and projecting holographic symbols into the air. At first, Jack and Emily froze, unsure what to make of the strange machine. Then, slowly, they approached it cautiously. "It's trying to communicate," Emily said, her voice filled with awe. She reached out tentatively, mimicking the gestures projected by the drone. To their surprise, the symbols shifted, forming patterns that seemed to respond to their movements. Jack stepped closer, his curiosity outweighing his caution. "Do you think it's the Zenari? Are they finally talking to us?" Emily nodded. "I think so. But we need to be careful. We don't know what they want." Over the next hour, they worked together to establish basic communication. Using drawings, gestures, and trial and error, they managed to convey simple ideas, like where they came from and why they were stranded. In return, the drone displayed images of the Zenari themselves. Tall, slender beings with large eyes and translucent skin. Their expressions were calm, almost serene, but there was an intelligence behind their gaze that left Jack and Emily feeling both awed and uneasy. Through the drone, the Zenari explained that they had been observing 07 for years, studying its unique ecosystem and the creatures that inhabited it. When Jack and Emily's ships crashed, the Zenari chose to monitor them rather than intervene, curious to see how humans would adapt to such a hostile environment. "You survived where others failed," the drone transmitted, its voice synthesized but clear. "We wish to learn from you." Jack exchanged a glance with Emily, who looked equally surprised. "What happens now?" he asked aloud, knowing the drone couldn't understand spoken words directly. The meeting with the Zenari marked a turning point for Jack and Emily. For days they worked closely with their alien hosts, sharing knowledge and learning about each other's worlds. The Zenari were fascinated by humanity's adaptability and creativity, while Jack and Emily marveled at the advanced technology and peaceful nature of the aliens. Despite their differences, a mutual respect began to form between them. Inside the Zenari spacecraft, Jack and Emily were introduced to tools and devices far beyond anything they had ever seen. Lizera explained that the Zenari had been studying Earth for years, observing its people from afar, but never interfering directly. Now, however, they saw an opportunity to collaborate, not just to help Jack and Emily survive, but to learn from their resilience. "We have much to gain from understanding your kind," Lizera said through the translation drone. "Your ability to endure hardship is inspiring." Jack nodded, though he couldn't help but feel uneasy. "We appreciate your help, but we still need to find a way home. Can you repair our ships?" Lizera hesitated before responding. "The damage to your vessels is severe. Repairing them will require time and resources we do not currently possess on this planet. However, there may be another solution." Emily leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. "What kind of solution?" Lizera gestured toward a holographic display, which projected images of sleek, futuristic ships. "We can transport you to a nearby outpost where repairs might be possible. But this journey carries risks. You would leave HFY 7 behind, along with any chance of returning here." Jack and Emily exchanged a glance. The idea of leaving the planet was tempting. They had endured enough hardship. But it also meant abandoning their original goal of repairing their own ships and finding a way back independently. Still, the offer was too significant to dismiss outright. "We'll think about it," Jack said finally. "But we need more information first. What happens if we go with you?" Lizera nodded, as if expecting his caution. "You will travel aboard our ship to the outpost. There, engineers will assess your vessel's components and determine if repair is feasible. If not, alternative arrangements can be made to ensure your safe return to Earth." Emily spoke up, her voice steady but cautious. "And what do you expect in return? You've helped us so far, but nothing comes without a price." The question seemed to surprise Lizera, though her expression remained calm. "Our intentions are not driven by gain. We seek only to understand. Your survival on HFY 7 has taught us valuable lessons about determination and cooperation. In exchange for our assistance, we ask only that you share your experiences openly." Jack and Emily discussed the proposal privately, weighing the pros and cons. On one hand, traveling to the outpost offered a real chance of escape, a way to leave the dangers of HFY 7 behind. On the other hand, trusting the Zenari completely required a leap of faith, especially given how little they truly knew about these aliens. Ultimately, they decided to accept the offer. "We'll go with you," Jack told Lizera, "but we want to bring some of our supplies, just in case." Lizera agreed, and preparations for the journey began immediately. Over the next few days, Jack and Emily gathered essential items from their cave shelter, including food, water, and tools. They also salvaged key components from both crash sites, hoping these parts might aid in repairing their ships later. As they packed, Emily paused to look around the cave one last time. It had become their home, a place of safety amidst chaos. Leaving it felt bittersweet, like saying goodbye to an old friend. "Do you think we'll ever come back here?" she asked quietly. Jack shrugged, his expression thoughtful. "Maybe. Or maybe this is just the start of something bigger. Either way, we've done all we could." The day of departure arrived sooner than expected. The Zenari spacecraft descended into the clearing near their camp, its sleek design gleaming under the twin suns. Jack and Emily stood side by side, their belongings secured in packs slung over their shoulders. As they approached the ship, they couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Are you ready?" Lizera asked as they boarded. "As ready as we'll ever be," Jack replied, forcing a smile. Inside the ship, everything was unfamiliar yet mesmerizing. The walls shimmered faintly, and soft hums filled the air, creating an atmosphere of calm efficiency. Jack and Emily were shown to a small chamber where they could rest during the journey. Though the seats were designed for Zenari physiology, adjustments were made to accommodate their human forms. The outpost was a marvel of alien engineering, its corridors alive with the hum of machinery and the soft glow of bioluminescent panels. Jack and Emily followed Lazira through the labyrinthine structure, their eyes wide as they took in the sights. The walls seemed to pulse faintly, as if the entire station were a living organism. Strange symbols floated in the air, shifting and rearranging themselves like constellations. "This place is incredible," Jack murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's like nothing I have ever seen." Emily nodded, her gaze fixed on the bustling activity around them. Zenari technicians moved with quiet efficiency, their slender forms gliding between consoles and workstations. Other species, some humanoid, others entirely alien, worked alongside them, each contributing to the outpost's operations. It was a melting pot of cultures, a testament to the Zenari's commitment to cooperation and understanding. Lazira led them to a large chamber filled with equipment designed for analyzing and repairing spacecraft. Engineers immediately began examining the salvaged components Jack and Emily had brought from Xura 7. They worked quickly, their movements precise and deliberate, while holographic displays projected detailed schematics of the damaged ships. "The repairs will take time," one of the engineers explained through the translation drone. "But we believe it is possible to restore at least one of your vessels to functional status." Jack and Emily exchanged a glance, relief washing over them. After everything they had endured, the idea of returning home felt almost surreal. Still, they knew better than to celebrate too soon. There was still much to do, and many challenges to face before they could leave this place. Over the next few days, they assisted the engineers whenever they could, offering insights into human technology and sharing information about their ship's systems. It wasn't always easy. The language barrier and differences in design often made communication difficult. But with patience and teamwork, progress was made. During their downtime, Jack and Emily explored the outpost, learning more about its inhabitants and their diverse backgrounds. They met traders from distant star systems, scientists studying cosmic phenomena, and even diplomats working to resolve conflicts between species. Each encounter deepened their appreciation for the vastness of the universe and humanity's small but significant role within it. One evening, as they sat together in a quiet corner of the outpost, Emily turned to Jack with a thoughtful expression. "Do you think people back on Earth will believe us when we tell them about all this?" Jack chuckled, shaking his head. "Probably not. Most folks don't even think aliens exist, let alone that we'd meet them and work together." "Maybe that's a good thing," Emily said softly. "We'll have proof now. Real evidence. Maybe this can change how people see the universe." Jack nodded, his smile fading slightly as he considered the implications. "It's a big responsibility. What if we mess it up? What if we say or do the wrong thing?" "We won't," Emily replied firmly. "We've come this far because we trusted each other and because we stayed true to who we are. We just need to keep doing that." Her words gave Jack strength, reminding him of why they had survived Xura 7 in the first place. It wasn't just luck or skill. It was their ability to adapt, to persevere, and to trust in the power of teamwork. Those qualities would serve them well, no matter what lay ahead. Finally, after weeks of effort, the engineers announced that one of the ships was ready for testing. It wasn't perfect. The hull bore scars from the crash, and some systems were jury-rigged using Zenari technology, but it was functional. Jack and Emily stood beside the vessel, their hearts pounding with anticipation. "This is it," Jack said, turning to Emily. "Are you ready?" Emily took a deep breath, her eyes shining with determination. "As ready as I'll ever be." Before boarding, they thanked Lazira and the other Zenari for their help. The alien scientist regarded them with an expression that might have been pride or gratitude. "You have taught us much," Lizera said through the translation drone. Your resilience and ingenuity remind us that survival is not just about strength, but about connection. May your journey home bring you peace. With those parting words, Jack and Emily climbed aboard the ship. As the engines roared to life, they strapped themselves into the cockpit, their hands steady on the controls. The outpost grew smaller in the viewport, its glowing lights fading into the darkness of space.